From the days of the freedom struggle, where many lawyers became freedom fighters, to contemporary times, where lawyers engage with civil society and aid the courts in resolving complex and consequential issues of the day. The introduction of the 5-year law course envisioned a systematic approach to educate future lawyers. With the introduction of this course, many aspects of the legal profession were democratized. You may ask me, what do you mean by democratizing the legal profession? Aspirants who may not have opted for 2 degrees to become lawyers in the past due to economic reasons can now enroll for a single course. The integration of 2 streams of education has provided a holistic interdisciplinary approach to the law. A 5-year educational journey at law school provides adequate time for you youngsters to evolve and grow as adults. The project to bridge access barriers between aspirants and the law is embedded in the project to democratize the future of social engineering. Many of you, therefore, who have not become engineers or doctors must realize the value of your existence today as lawyers. You may not be civil or mechanical engineers, or for that matter IT engineers, but you are social engineers. You may not have become doctors to administer medical care to the wounded and the sick, but you are lawyers who are intended to heal the wounds of society. As lawyers, your role is cut out in the future of our democratic nation, and your role is cut out to be the torchbearers of freedom, liberty, and equality. I am reminded of what our Honorable President of India, Srimati Draupadi Murmu ji, said in her address on the occasion of Constitution Day 2022. The President of India reminisced her formative years when villagers would synonymize lawyers with God Almighty. This was because people would approach lawyers in their hour of crisis and rely on them to solve their problems. Lawyers hold a pivotal position within society because they are endowed with significant educational prowess and social influence. This combination of educational prowess and social influence garners a high level of trust, but also places on you as young lawyers to be a profound responsibility. Throughout our history, lawyers have played a crucial role in demystifying the complexities of legal language for the layperson. Lawyers serve dual roles as the voice of the people in the courts and simultaneously as interpreters of the law for the masses. So during your journey in law school, you will of course learn the phrases which our non-lawyers don't know about. You will know about res judicata, you will be taught about promissory estoppel, you will be taught about the principles of natural justice, that no man should be, and man you mean no man, woman or third gender, no person should be condemned without being heard. Audi alteram partem, no person should participate in a decision of a case where they have a personal interest. Nemo judex in sua causa. So you serve as you imbibe these legal principles, yet your role is to demystify these principles in your engagement with society. A farmer who comes to you with a mutation case or for a suit for partition, you cannot really explain their rights in Latin terms, because these Latin terms would be Greek to our clients. You have to demystify the law, make it simple for people to understand. But you also interpret the law and rights to common people. Therefore, when I write as a judge, I always ask myself, whom do I write for? Do I write for academics who will critique my judgment in law journals? Do I write for an esoteric part of society which disbelieves everything good that is happening in society? Or do I write for common citizens in a language which they understand? Remember that lawyers act as a conduit, as a connecting point between the intricate details of legislation and regulations to those in search of justice. For the citizen who approaches you, it is not the black letter of the law, but the quest for justice which defines their confidence in your abilities. It is imperative for you students of the law to keep learning and evolving to meet these important tasks which have been entrusted to lawyers by our society. This requires critical engagement and ability to listen to different perspectives and a genuine interest in the well-being of people around us. Listen. The one thing which I have learned as a judge, and even before that as a lawyer, is to listen. When I was a lawyer, I would listen to every word that was said by my client. I would listen to my client because that listening gave me the story of injustice. When I heard that story of injustice, I would translate that story into legal language for the judge. I would also listen to the judge because the judge would be constantly telling me about the deficiencies in my case which I had to meet. Because if I did not persuade the judge, I couldn't succeed for my lawyer. I couldn't succeed for my clients. So therefore, listening, articulate presentation, and the ability to understand are key virtues of the practice of law. When I received the invite for today, I was glad to see that the celebration has been named Nyayotsav, or a celebration of justice. Our constitution embarked on this festive journey over 7 decades ago. Justice is a preambular virtue. Preambular in the sense that is referred to in the constitution at the forefront. Justice, social, economic and political. But its presence also signified the historical lack of justice perpetuated by colonialism, casteism, social hierarchies, and patriarchy in our society. The differing visions of the idea of justice are an example of the importance of engagement and critical learning. The one thing which I learned as a lawyer was the ability to focus amongst the cacophony of voices. When I joined the Mumbai bar, the Bombay bar as it was then called, our bar room was a melting pot of ideas, a melting pot of religions, a melting pot of ideologies. People around me on the bar table would be discussing everything from the stock market to the latest score in the cricket match, to how a judge had not understood a particular point which a lawyer was making, or better still, where people were going to go out and have lunch that day. But between all this, you had to focus and try and understand the case which you had to present before the court. But this taught me something very important about Indian society which I must share with you. We had lawyers who were fiercely opposed to each other in the courts. Lawyers belonging to different ends of the religious spectrum. Lawyers who belong to different ends of the political spectrum. lawyers who are conservative, lawyers who are liberal, lawyers who believed in the idea of India, lawyers who were cynical about the idea of India. But we all engaged with each other. We talked to each other. We spoke to each other. We critiqued each other's virtues and failings. But in this process, there emerged the great synthesis that defines the stability and character of our nation. And that synthesis is when we as individuals accept that we are individuals with different viewpoints, that we are individuals with different food habits, that we are individuals with different ways of faith or belief, that we are individuals with different languages, that we are individuals with different cultures, even within our states. No two districts in Andhra Pradesh are similar to each other. Their topography is different, their geography is different, the crop patterns are different, the nature of politics is different, their history is different, the nature of marginalization is different. But through this all then emerges the great idea of India as one nation. And this idea of India as one nation arises when we realize that all of us, in doing different things, in eating differently, in dressing differently, in praying differently, in speaking differently, are yet committed to one central idea, which is the welfare of this nation and this civilization. Let me explain by giving you an example which was narrated to me by my own guru in Delhi Law, in the Delhi Law faculty, the Campus Law Center. We had very distinguished teachers, whether it was Dr. B. Shridramaya, who taught us law and poverty, Dr. Latika Sarkar, who taught us criminology. She taught us the essence of gender justice. Or whether it was Dr. Upendra Bakshi, who taught us about law and human rights, and a whole host of other people. And they taught us about this example about Plato's allegory of the cave in Plato's famous book called The Republic, Volume 7. A group of persons are confined to a cave, a cavern since birth. They are chained, facing a wall with no knowledge of the outside world. As people and animals pass by the cave, they cast a shadow on the wall of the cave. The people inside the cave begin to name different shadows, believing that they are experiencing actual entities. Suddenly, the chains of one of the cave persons is broken and he rushes outside. But when he rushes outside, he is disoriented by the light. He is used to darkness. So when he goes into the sunlight, he is disoriented by the sunlight. After adjusting and realizing that he had been mistaking shadows for reality, he goes back to the cave and the darkness and attempts to explain his experiences to the others in the cave. But he is no longer used to the darkness as a person who has gone into sunlight, and he can barely see the shadows on the wall. The other persons in the cave think that the outside world has blinded him, and they violently resist any attempts to be freed. So when this person who has seen the freedom of sunlight goes back into the dark, those who are in the dark violently resist him and his attempts to free them from darkness into sunlight. Plato's example shows how fickle our perception can be as human beings. The chained people in the cave believed the shadows to be real entities. because their life was limited to their experiences of only seeing shadows on the wall. You know, as children we used to always make those shadows of deer with our hands, deer or the snake or the tiger. You remember all that? When one of them is freed, he finds it difficult to reconcile the conflict between his version of reality and the physical entities and light outside the cave. He grows to perceive light and physical objects only when he gets the opportunity to see and experience it for himself. When we speak of high ideals, we must desist from making them mere platitudes or mantras. Our perception of reality is influenced by our experiences of life. These experiences are in turn dictated by our social and economic location in life. While we may not be able to step into each other's shoes to question our beliefs and understand others, we may adjust for it by showing a genuine interest in our fellow beings and lending our ears to their perspectives. The people who remained chained in the cave had no way of understanding what their freed companion was saying. They were not only comfortable in their ignorance, but were hostile to their companion who pointed it out. In our life, therefore, we get the opportunity to play all the parts in this example which I gave you from Plato's Republic. In some instances, we are the people casting the shadows in darkness. In others, we are the freed cavemen. You take your pick on whether to be the cavemen in darkness or whether you want to be the freed men who are in the sunlight. But nevertheless, we must resist becoming the cavemen who refuse to engage with their companions and violently defended their right to ignorance. And my little message to you this morning is, please don't do anything to defend your own ignorance. Defending your own ignorance as human beings is the easiest path to follow. We have within each of us the light as well as the darkness. Within each of us dwells the light, but that light can be put out by what dwells within us, which is ignorance. So it's a constant battle for us to ensure that the light within prevails, and that light between our lips, in our hearts, in our minds, in our bodies, in our souls is not extinguished by the darkness of prejudice, by the darkness of hate, by the darkness of not accepting others for what they are. You will find over a generation that life has its highs and lows. In any given society, different people may feel a sense of injustice. They may feel that their life is more difficult in comparison to others, or that they have to work harder to achieve the same goals as others. Many of you who have come to law college may be the first generation which has come to a college of law. Some of you may come to the college of law as the second or the third or the fourth generation. Unfortunately, justice remains an inequitably distributed virtue. In understanding social justice, we must be self-introspective and understand the systemic causes for the maldistribution of resources, opportunities, and life chances. The recipe for our grand emancipation is to engage in a deliberative exercise and lend a ear to people from diverse backgrounds and perspectives. In our mission to understand and secure justice to all, we must bear in mind the means to deploy and not to deploy in arriving at justice. You must always realize, young students, that however important your object may be, your means cannot ever justify that object if your means are not fair. The framers of our constitution have stipulated for social, economic and political justice. But the idea of justice stipulated in our constitution is not an end or goal in itself, but it represents an ethic to be continuously practiced. And nothing is worth in life if you have to give up your ethic in search of your goals. A justice-oriented approach to constitutional governance assumes a democracy which is discursive, which is deliberative, where we respect each other for our viewpoints. In a discursive democracy, decisions are made with consensus, in constant dialogue with the people. Different constituent groups of the society can exchange their views with each other, persuade their fellow citizens, and aspire to achieve their goals. As Chief Justice of India, I preside over a collegium. The collegium which recommends persons for appointment as judges of the High Court and the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice of India is the head of the family. But my voice is not the representative voice of either the collegium or my court. My ability to incorporate the voices of all others around me defines the legitimacy of my own work as Chief Justice. My colleagues in the collegium are drawn from Delhi, as Justice Sanjeev Khanna is, Justice Bhushan Gavai, coming from the Bombay High Court, from Mumbai, representative of the ideals and aspirations of the Dalits, of the Bahujan Samaj, of Justice Suryakant, who comes from Haryana, of Justice Anirudh Bose, who comes from West Bengal, Calcutta. So between the five of us, we represent the diversity in so many which ways of the nation, of people who think a little differently, but who are all involved in one mission, the mission of making our court a more legitimate institution, efficient in the cause which it subserves, and able to provide justice to common citizens. Therefore, our deliberations, our discussions are premised on the postulate that when we engage people in our conversations and exchanges, we arrive at better conclusions for the entire community. When I was a young law student like you, much of our discussions took place in the classrooms. We asked our professors difficult questions. Sometimes they found our questions inconvenient. But a lot of our discussions took place not in the classroom, but while eating in the bar, in the canteen of the Delhi University, or having that cup of tea outside the classroom on those cold wintry mornings, because we felt that all the problems of India and the world were on our shoulders. And we always thought that we had solutions to those problems which those in authority could not see. When you grow out from the margins into authority, you realize how difficult governance is. It's very easy to stand outside the system and to say that everything is wrong with our system. It's very easy to do that. Because when you stand outside the system and criticize the system, it's simple because you have no stakes in the outcomes which are reached necessarily. When you enter the system and start taking decisions for yourself, you realize how difficult it is to draw those balances between conflicting ideas, between conflicting views, and how difficult it is to forge that unified path in a nation as diverse as ours. So when you deliberate, when you engage, when you speak, don't be cynical. Be optimistic about the future of India, because the future of India truly belongs to the young. Our economy, our society is now reaping what is called the demographic dividend. And that is because we are predominantly a young society. We are not predominantly an ailing, or for that matter, an elderly society. We are a young society. So reap the demographic dividend which you represent. Self-help groups are built on the premise that when we step up and help each other, the entire community is enriched. Similarly, when we make accessible infrastructure, we create the curb cut effect. What is the curb cut effect? The curb cut effect is that the pavement ends with a sharp cut. Somebody in a wheelchair cannot enter that pavement. Now, what this really postulates is that everyone, regardless of disability, must be benefited from accessibility features in our society. Another example is what all of you would have learned in your class on environmental law, the environmental impact assessment. The assessment studies the environmental impact of a given development project. In doing so, it engages with the local community, where the proposed project will take place to gather views and facts about the interrelated socio-economic, cultural, and human health impacts. The report of the assessment is instrumental in deciding whether the project must be implemented and whether the life of the community would be irreparably harmed by the project. It allows the state to calculate the appropriate amount of compensation for the environment and the community. This deliberation, inherent in the environmental impact assessment, is an indispensable part of justice for the community where a development project is proposed. In other words, the community may be harmfully impacted if its needs and project's impacts are not properly studied. In a deliberation, marginalized segments of our society and citizenry get the opportunity to express their grievances and demand that their lived experiences be taken into account. It is premised on a decision by consensus. On a macro scale, our country has charted on a democratic and deliberative journey to achieve social, economic, and political justice. But on an individual scale, lawyers must imbibe the ethic of a respectful exchange of ideas, empathy, and justice for the weak. Just like our Constitution envisages an ideal environment of debate and deliberation to arrive at justice-oriented results, we must aspire in our personal and professional settings to create an environment of openness and freedom. How do you create that environment of openness and freedom? You create that environment of openness and freedom by hearing others, whether at home or outside your home. In my years of adjudication as a judge on the bench of the Bombay High Court, later as Chief Justice in Allahabad, and now in the Supreme Court as the Chief Justice of India, I have realized that the best lawyers are not those who constantly interrupt counsel representing their opposite party, but lawyers who listen patiently to the arguments and respond with articulation, knowledge, and restraint. There is a misconception that only those lawyers succeed who will shout the loudest, who will interrupt the other side the most, and who will try to browbeat the judge. Please rest assured that this is a complete misconception. The lawyers who succeed are those who have the ability to use reason as the path to justice, who use common sense to illuminate the path, and who have the ability to engage with the judge by persuading them to a point of view which they represent, however unpopular it may be. The first environment where many of us come into our own as adults is our college life. Our experiences in college inform our worldview and develop our temperament while engaging with personal and professional life. If we want lawyers to contribute to society and to justice in our society, we must create an environment conducive to their free thinking and independence. Always be free to ask questions. There are no theorems in law. Never accept something which is informed to you as gospel truth. Ask yourselves why this is treated as gospel. Ask yourself, is there a better question? Ask yourself if there is a better alternative to the path which we have chosen. We must therefore inculcate in our students the ability to question with reason. I emphasize on reason because we also do not want to promote pessimism by questioning everything without a reason. Both aspects are necessary. A sense of faith in the system is necessary. If faith in our democracy is necessary, as much your faith in your own ability to question and seek better options and alternatives. In our imagination of an emancipated society, we must think of the ends we want to achieve, of the goals we want to achieve. But no matter how exhaustive we try to make our aspirations for end results, it will remain ineffective unless we have an ecosystem which imbibes and perpetuates the values which we wish to see in our ideal world. A piecemeal approach to justice is illusory. Similarly, a hope for an intelligent, proactive and vocal legal fraternity is illusory if they are deterred against free thinking in college. So I would invite you to be free thinking young students in your years in college. Also remember that the pursuit of law is lifelong. Every day when I open my digitized files to open the 60 odd cases which come before us on Monday and Friday, I realize that law is a lifelong learning experience. No case is similar to the other. If as lawyers you feel that, oh, I know so much about this branch of law that I don't have to learn much more, that will stop your own evolution and growth. So don't ever believe that you know everything about that particular subject. As lifelong students in the law, we must ensure that we retain our ability to face challenges and challenge injustice. By choosing to do something in the face of injustice, we uphold our constitutional values. The very famous thinker James Baldwin said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." This is vital for students of law because to be disheartened is a privilege we cannot afford to have. Lawyers have been generating hope for the people for as long as they existed. I started my judgment in Navtej Singh Johhar's case with the line, "The lethargy of the law is manifest yet again." You had put up a part of that judgment on the screen. Despite the constitutionally guaranteed right to equality and the right to non-discrimination, it took nearly 7 long decades for homosexuality to be decriminalized in our society. This is just one story of the many. The unfortunate nature of the law is that the law can be lethargic and filled with inertia, but the lethargy of the law must not make you complacent, hopeless, or a conformist. When it comes to constitutional values and nurturing a constitutional culture, be ahead of the curve and lead by example. Remember that the same law, the Indian Penal Code in 1860 and until 1947, was used to jail our freedom fighters. Remember that the same law in the hands of an oppressive colonial power was used to subjugate the freedom movement. But the same law of 1860 after 1947 became an instrument of administering justice consistent with the rule of law. And the rule of law does not mean rule by the law, but a rule by a law which is just, a law which is fair, and a law which is reasonable. Now, how is it that the same law which was used to subjugate the aspirations of Indians for freedom has become a law which is guided by the principles of the rule of law? The difference is who wields the law. So it is those who wield the law who determine whether the law will be an element of oppression or the law will be a means to achieve liberty and freedom. And those who wield the law will be you. When my time is up and I hang up my boots, I will be looking up to you, to whom the baton is going to pass on how you are going to wield the law to achieve social justice. The communities that we create for ourselves will be the backbone of our collective quest for justice in India. I am sure that the Sri Venkateswara University Tirupati and the Department of Law will be citadels of freedom, critical legal studies, and academic rigor for generations to come. Before I leave, I want to share that when I received the invitation from your university, I readily accepted it because I believe that every law teaching institution in the country is important. Quite often, it is perceived that only national law universities are producing quality education. How untrue. I do not believe in such binaries. The ability of a university to succeed does not depend on what information you give students, but whether you allow your students to think. The object of a university and a law university is not just to learn what the law is or to learn the law, but to learn to think about the law. So please learn in your 5 years, or some of you are in your 5th year, in whatever time you have, or in your 4 years, or 3 years, or 2 years, or 1 year that you have left to be lawyers, that your success and your mission in society must be to think about the law. No matter where you study from, you can still excel in the legal profession. People from Andhra Pradesh have become top doctors across the world, top engineers, top IT professionals. And I'm sure that in you will continue this tradition of taking this state and through it India to new levels, not merely in India but globally. A lot of people will tell you that you shouldn't go abroad, but you must come back and settle. I do not belong to that particular point of view. Some people will tell you don't earn money, but only contribute to the social good. Again, I do not belong to that particular viewpoint. My viewpoint is very simple. In everything that you do with a sense of mission, fulfillment and purpose. Some of you will become lawyers who will wear your coats, black coats and your bands, and you will go and get an injunction for a client. Others may become judicial officers and join the district judiciary. Some of you who may become like the eminent people on the dais and your faculty here, law teachers. Some of you may not stick to the law at all. Some of you may become chefs, poets, writers, politicians. That's fine. Some of you may be global torchbearers of India across the world and never come back. But I'm sure that the values which you have learned from your law studies at the Sri Venkateswara University will keep you in good stead, whatever you do in your life. At the end of it all that matters is the commitment to learn as much as you can and then pay back to society in whatever way you can. And each one of you has the ability within you to pay back. And the payback time does not arise when you start making money to pay back. The payback time arises now, irrespective of whether or not you have any money in your pocket. Thank you, and I wish you all the best for the future.